Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Solutions with Chanti and happy Friday. And I love to be seeing all of you on a Friday and especially with Jessie. What a
Yay.
bonus. It's
Right.
bonus freaky fun day Friday with Jessie. Yay. How are you, Jess?
Doing well. Yeah, I say let's do a freaky fun Friday. That sounds good.
Absolutely do. And what better way than to talk about our lovely Charlize? But before we go ahead, would you like to pray for us, please?
Yes. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the beauty of every morning that you give to us. We thank you for the richness of all the wealth that you have given to us. We ask that you would bless our time together, that you would bless our airways, our internet, our technology. We ask for this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen indeed. Thank you, Jess. And hello, everybody. So awesome to see you all in the chat again. Happy New Year! For those of you who didn't see our previous show on, I think, Wednesday, I hope 2025 is amazing for us all. We all got our rollerblades on. I think it's going to be a fast one. But at least we're holding each other's hands, yeah? So that's the wonderful thing.
Right.
Anyway, wow, but listen, before we get into our show, I mean, I just want to maybe just touch on some of the funky things that are going on right now. I know you guys in America are having all these weird and wonderful, misty, foggy things
I don't know
happening.
if they're wonderful,
Yeah, in
but
well, okay, let me rephrase that. Dodgy for
that's a good
misty,
word for
foggy
it.
things, very dodgy for, right? And yeah, in South Africa, I mean, we have been having, and in the Karoo, now you all know I'm from the Karoo, it's the desert area of South Africa. And a couple of years back, all they wanted to do was frack here, right? This fracking
Mhm.
thing that they're doing. Um, Now we've been having earthquakes here. And also, and because of the, and right in the Karoo, right? And
Mhm.
all sorts of now, Jesse, you and I were talking off there, little tsunami warnings. That is so not. We in South Africa, I think Africa even, I don't know about more north, we don't have earthquakes. We don't even have earth tremors. We don't have tsunamis. We don't have these things. We'll have spring. That's about it, right? But I just find it, and I mean, the last couple of years, particularly this year or last year, 2023, the snow, we had snow like half a meter high and unbelievable. So before we go any further, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on all of that stuff.
Well, I mean, not just there, but all over the world, we're having very unusual weather patterns. As children, we all grew up with, the definite, defined four seasons, definite weather patterns, and all of a sudden things are shifting that are just abnormal. Like I know, this past winter we had where, it was like 1 week it was like sub temperatures, below zero. The next thing you know, it's like in 70-degree weather in the middle of winter, and you're like, okay, what in the world is going on? And I think we have to pose the question, and I think we already know the answer. Are individuals, connected with a foreign government and military controlling our weather? And are they weaponizing the weather against people or against certain areas? Is that weaponization of weather connected to the movement of children? I think that's really what we're seeing, especially when you get the odd places that are getting things that they normally don't even experience. we have to ask, are they using the weather to keep us indoors or to limit our movement and activity so that they can cover up and hide, their activities? So for me personally, that's my top, belief where I lean in those things. And even, we had this past week, there's this strange fog that isn't fog. Whatever is coming out of that, I don't think is good. And, is there a weaponization of the weather against people, the American people or people in other countries? I think there is, and I think it should be concerning to us. And how long are we going to take the scorch and the ice cold, the back and forth? It's not, it's not a good thing, I don't feel. But
Do you think that, and I know you guys with this foggy stuff that's been going on recently, do you think,
excuse you,
bless me,
bless you.
talking about foggy stuff, that was 3, you see, that's a good one. Do you think the foggy stuff is filled with all sorts of things that are dumbing us down, and perhaps otherworldly creatures popping in through there? Is that sort of some part of the agenda, do you think, with whatever's going on? We know we've been told for years there's the alien invasion coming.
Mm-hmm.
Question is that like, is this the fake alien invasion, or what is going on,
Yeah, I guess to me, like, I put pieces together. So the first piece of everything going on, that I look through is that, just a few months back, we had all these hurricanes hitting the Florida area. From there, things even went all the way to the Carolina area, particularly to Biltmore, which I've named in my affidavits. And in that, I did a report on timothycharleshomeseth.com about the massive lithium that, fields of lithium and stuff. And even there's been reported, odd things with lithium plants occurring. And in that, my first question, I would be curious to know if in that white fog powder, if there's lithium in there.
Right.
And in that, is there, if you have lithium, you have the potential for radioactive material. What does that do to the water sources? What does that do to, things, chemicals they put in the air? It's all about energy for them. And either there's going to be an escalation of energy fields or a suppression of energy fields. Lithium is something that's used to both heighten spiritual acuity as well as to also suppress spiritual acuity, because of its frequency in connection to the mind. So, is there a suppression going on in the Florida area for purposes, that they're trying to create certain fields and, do stuff with it? I think there is. I think they're trying to heighten their spiritual acuity so that they can do things, but we'll see where that goes. Again, just sharing my thoughts on it and kind of some of the accumulation of things that I see. And in that, you're also going to have, the movement of children, I believe, is at the forefront of everything from one area to another.
Because that's really, at the end of the day, I think the transportation of children, call it that, is the key. Now, the question is, and I think once this is exposed, because it's not just that they're transporting children, but then the question begs, why are they transporting children? Because that in itself then opens 10 other different cans of worms. And, where are the children going to? What are they being transported for? You can't just be taking hundreds and thousands of children just for a few elite, right? In my opinion.
Well, no, yeah. And I mean, I've addressed it in my Congress petition, which people can, again, find all the affidavits and all of that on timothycharleshomeseth.com. But I've addressed that, why are they transporting the children? And we need to, our legislation needs to cover, the criminal activity of the transportation of children if they're being used for adrenal or organ harvesting, if they're being used for sexual exploitation, as well as if they're being used for satanic ritual purposes.
Right.
All of those things need to be put in our legislation because that is exactly why they're transporting these children. The highest offender in that, I believe, is they're being transported for satanic ritual. And there's a weaponization of the children, not just in their life, but also in their death. We've talked about how they still buy and sell and trade even after the children have died. They're still using their bodies, their soul, their images to profit and to make money off of, those children. And that's a huge issue.
But what's interesting, Jessie, also, and I think what's going to start coming up, and I think, again, for me is like, I always encourage people to ask why. Not why, but why. Because when you're asking why from a state of, I really choose to know because I want to know what's going on so I can do something, God sends you the answers or the people that have those resources, right? So the more of us that ask, why are they transporting the children? Because we might think it's just for a bunch of sick pedophiles, right? It's so much more than that. And then the question comes as well is that, okay, so if there's 8 million children transported a year, where are their remains? Where have you buried them? Because surely we want to see these children. Oh, but we don't have any remains.
And I think that's the problem is that there isn't remains. What did they do with the remains? They buy, sell, and trade off those, so there isn't any evidence.
And that just makes the crime even that much more depraved, right? Because it's not just hurting children, ending their lives, and burying them somewhere. It's a hell of a lot more than that. It's so sick. And that's the thing that I think the general public is going to have such a hard time waking up to. I've got friends who are awake, but man, when I start talking to them about this stuff on a much deeper level, they just go, hang on, okay, enough for the moment. I want to hear, but let me just digest that. And I'm going, girl, you got a long way to go. We got a whole lot of nights to be talking.
We just skipped over the surface of this at the moment.
Exactly, right? So that's the interesting thing. And, I think about these things because I think there's so much that has to be covered up. It's not just the missing children, because I think a lot of these kids also fed to some of these creepy creatures of the night, along with a whole lot of other stuff as well. So I think, we just started lancing the surface of this one here. Yeah. Anyway, gosh. So I think we will. Is there anything else you want to say about that before I move on to?
No, I think besides previous things we've covered on it, I encourage people to go back and watch. I've put a lot of it on the different websites. Timothy Charles Homeseth has more of the reports and the thoughts that I've had reporting some of those things, and then Some of it you can find on my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, under the unveiling of the system series. So, you know, particularly our stuff on the holy doors and what just happened at the Vatican is up on there now. So I encourage people to go back and watch those things.
Exactly. But I'm just a little bit jealous, actually, because I saw someone said you spoke about lithium on another show. How dare you?
Oh, that was yeah, that was the report I put out. So you can get that on that was on the Timothy Charles.
What a relief.
We did it here too, Chanti. But yeah, I talked about Biltmore and how they've got the massive lithium fields there, and you actually, when you walk up on the property, you'll see what it looks like, this flaky, almost like a mica type rock, where it you know, it looks like it's these rock flaky crystals that are clear that flake off, and when you see that, you know, that's the lithium, and it's everywhere up there at Biltmore, because it's something that they use, like I said, in the system to heighten spiritual acuity or to suppress it. But that's something that they would manufacture, and I mean, even think of the extent of that for a lot of behavioral health issues, especially that revolve around hearing or seeing, they'll use lithium as the main pharmakia to address those issues, and that's not by accident. You know, that's all of their alchemy and their you know, the different so-called medical things that they're going to push to control people's physical and spiritual bodies.
This just makes me so sick, because in the DRC, the Congo, okay, I've spoken about that a lot. Africa, DRC, Congo. Just for the sake of the viewers who don't know, that is bordering Zambia, going more North Africa. One of the places that you find the chimpanzees, as well as I think gorilla. They're absolutely gorilla as well. So it's we did that show on Ellen last week. It's sort of up in that area. But the Congo is the place, and it was colonized by the Belgians, right? And Leopold was ruling the Congo. And he was probably the most horrific colonizer ever. It was well known he was torturing the African people, cutting off their hands. He had chocolates made, right, in the shape of African people's hands. And it was well known that that was containing flesh of sorts, because he was a cannibal, right? So, of course, that's where still to this day, the diamonds, when you watch that movie Blood Diamonds, right, that's the area we're talking about. And Blood Diamonds is a lot more than just children mining, because they really refer to that for us normies anyway, as blood diamonds, where it's children that are mining, and there's a lot of conflict over the earth, so there's war. And people are getting killed in the most horrific ways. But from stories we've been told with you, there's actually a lot more to it than that as well. But the Congo is where lithium is mined as well. Diamonds. The Congo is probably the richest country in Africa when it comes to mineral wealth. And that's where they're mining the lithium. Children are mining. And really what they're saying now, oh, well, it's nothing. It's really just, we just need it for car batteries. So these kids are mining this stuff for us and our cell phones and our car batteries and stuff, right? And we're fighting, say, save the children, save the children. Meanwhile, we're talking on our cell phone, right? And sadly, that is the contradiction. But in terms of what you're saying, it's used for a lot more than that. So I would love to actually do a show on that sometime. Is
Okay.
it
Yeah,
enough?
we should do a show on that. We can talk
Okay.
about the blood magic and, you know, blood diamonds and how those are really made.
Guys, are you happy that we're going to be doing that soon? Say yes. But that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Wow. So we will definitely be chatting about that more. And yeah. Anyway, so what we're going to be talking about today as well is Charlize Theron. Now, I'm sure you guys, you are familiar with her. She's, I think, won 2 Oscars already, but she's one of South Africa's most popular and well-known exports. And as I always say, you know, as South Africans, when we go back to the apartheid era and stuff like that, you know, there were so many restrictions against us and stuff. We didn't even know, no singers came here. I mean, we kind of had like movies and stuff. We were very, you know, we were kind of very isolated, right? You know, so obviously when things started opening up, you know, then we were very excited. Charlize Theron was one of our first exports. And of course, we were all extremely proud of her. And of course, people like Elon Musk was also one of our exports, right? And every now and again, we have like a really great sportsman or something that plays overseas, and we shine the spotlight on that person in a major way. Charlize was definitely one of those people. And the story goes that she was discovered while standing in a queue of a bank, cashing her modeling check that she was scraping together and living in some dingy little apartment somewhere, and then was discovered while she was standing in the queue of the bank by this modeling agent, whatever. And of course, then the rest is history, right? Because so she goes on to be this famous actress. But let's just reverse a little bit and backtrack, because she's from Johannesburg. Now, I love the way that I don't care whether you live on the streets or in a palace. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what class you are. But I just find it very interesting how they paint her persona to the international world to begin with. That she's from this farm in Africa. She's not from a farm in Africa. She is from a plot in an area called Benoni of Johannesburg, which is where it's kind of like on the outskirts. A plot is a bigger plot of land where you can have your chickens or whatever running around. It's far from an African farm. I come from a farm in Africa. Okay, there's a big difference.
So it's not even a farm, it's part of the city. But instead of not being allowed to have chickens in your yard, you can have chickens in your yard.
Right, exactly. And you can even have a goat if you want to.
Is it really a poor area, or is it wealthy?
And this is what I want to say. I'm not an elitist or a classist, but no, not at all wealthy. Not at all. Okay. Benoni is from the East Rand. I mean, when you go to Johannesburg, it's divided into four areas. You get the north, you get the south, you get the east, and you get the west. So the north, you're going to have Sandton. Now that's where all the old money and the rich people are. The north of Johannesburg is your amazing. East, no, not at all. You're getting your more blue collar workers. Nothing against that, please. I want to reiterate. And unfortunately, a lot of them drink heavily and they gamble a lot. So that there's that kind of reputation there, right? And then the West is sort of like Afrikaans middle class. You're going to find a lot. And of course, there's a lot of other things as well, Afrikaans middle class. And then the South is also where you get all your biker gangs and stuff, right?
Okay, so you said she came from the east part?
Yes, which is Afrikaans blue worker, if you want to put it in that way. So that's where she comes from. And so there's not this very elaborate, beautiful farm in Africa where she grew up. That's not true to begin with.
Most likely no goats, none of that. Maybe some chickens.
Maybe 4 chickens. Maybe 4 chickens.
No cows, no farm.
Probably not.
Okay.
Anyway,
We got the
but
picture.
then, yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit. So the story goes is that her father was killed in a car accident when she was 16, right? And her mother raised her, the single mother, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Not true. That never, ever happened. In fact, as it
None of
turns
that
out,
happened?
no.
Okay.
Her mother shot her father and unalived him. And
Okay.
the story we hear is that he was an alcoholic and a drunk and what have you, and apparently came home and used to beat up on them. But then every now and again, it's like hearing a story from Oprah Winfrey about her terrible childhood. And then every now and again, you hear a family member peek through and say, none of that happened. So you don't really know what to believe. But every now and again, we've heard, yeah, well, that did in fact not happen. In fact, what happened, Charlize unalived him. That was, so the whole story is where the Charlize
wow,
or her
like you've
mom.
heard she's done it. Okay.
Yeah. So there's
Wow.
that to it as well. Now, listen, if a man is abusing his wife and children and he doesn't stop and that's your only way of defense, hey, then you know that that's what you need to do. You'll know in the moment if you're taking such a drastic action. And I can honestly say I've been a healer for many years. Hearing some of the stories I've heard from women, I probably would have unalived a few of those men in my life as well. Just saying. But so that's the story there. But now, and it wasn't long after that. That happened when she was 16, right? And it wasn't long after that. Off she goes to America and then gets discovered in the bank queue. And shortly after that, lands probably her most successful movie role yet, which was Devil's Advocate, where she acts with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. Now, listen, that's why I say, wow, you have to, as a South African, we were like, what? Charlize? Wow, And I do believe she won an Oscar for that movie and another one where she actually played, she played also a lesbian, I think a woman who unalived her partner for some reason. But that was I can't remember the name. Gosh, I meant to look it up before and I forgot to. Where she, in that movie, they turned her to look so unattractive compared to what she usually is. She deserved the Oscar for that. No question around that. Okay, but we understand where the Oscars and things come from. And funnily enough, in the movie Devil's Advocate, Monster, thank you, Kimberly. Yes, Monster. I want to just, those of you who've seen the movie Devil's Advocate, I've lost one or two trains of thought there, but basically she's married to Keanu. They're a young couple. He's a hotshot little lawyer. And then, of course, Al Pacino finds him and lures him into New York and offers him a job at this hotshot lawyer's attorney's office. And literally, if you go and watch that movie, in fact, it's a fascinating movie to watch now that you know what we know, because literally taking on the role of Lucifer himself, and at some time in the movie, Charlize falls pregnant, loses the baby, but has these incredible hallucinations. Her husband starts being attracted to someone else in the firm, a woman, has these hallucinations with her, all the stuff of this high-level sorcery, right? That was going on in this movie. So I just find it very fascinating that all of that runs up to
that all of that runs up to where, it parallels with her real life and things out of her real life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I find it also fascinating. She's on the Nelson Mandela. Sorry, I've got an external camera and it does funny things sometimes. She's on the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. She's on the patron. She's a patron for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, which by now we know is as dodgy as Dora in the dark corner, right? So that's that is not good. And secondly, also another thing, she's well known here in South Africa to be funding Julius Malema. Now, if any of you know anything about South African politics, he's the leader of the Economic Freedom Front, the guys that are always dressed in red. And he is a violent hater. He calls for the unaliving of farmers every single day. The EFF is responsible for a lot of these farm murders where old people, children are tortured. And if anyone says farm murders in South Africa are not happening, I promise you they are.
Well,
Torturing children are drowned in boiling water. Old people are drawn and quartered, hung upside down. The most horrific ways to kill someone. That's what they do. She funds that. Now, for me, I have a problem with anyone who funds that. And that's why she is not at all popular in South Africa at all anymore. Then, of course, there's the story of her. I want to just see if she's got her kids here. She, of course, has adopted the two little boys. There they are. Jackson. And I don't know what the little one's name is, and has transgendered them. Jackson, she says, when he was 3 years old, he said he wanted to be a girl. So she then immediately started transgendering him. I want to just see what that is there. Yeah, that's Julius Malema. That's just a story, yeah. And then, of course, there's Jackson when she got him. And he's now a little girl. There we go. That's him there. So perhaps you could, again, I know there's a lot of, if we're looking at all these celebrities, there's a lot of similarities that run through this thing. Africa is a common theme for them. Adopting African kids is another common theme. I know Charlize didn't actually adopt her kids from Africa, though. But I don't think it makes any difference, really. So I'd be interested to know what you say about all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think, the biggest thing is to remember that, what we're really dealing with behind the scenes goes beyond just people and, the evil in people's hearts. We're dealing with a system, and that system has a foreign government and a foreign military. And that system, is connected to the end time system of the beast. And the job of each generation and those who are born into these bloodline families is to keep that system going. Now, in that, individuals have to make choices. Everything that they do keeps that system going, as well as, becomes a sacrifice in their own lives. And that's what we see with a lot of these children. We see, children being pulled up, being raised up as stars, being put into positions of power and authority. Now, think of that, even that term. After we did our one show this past week with the flags, we talked about the stars in the system and what those mean to the brotherhood. You have something that represents them becoming gods. That's what the stars represent. It represents their godhood, their enlightenment within their belief structure. And that belief structure they guise as a religion. And in it, they're going to practice their beliefs. And those beliefs include the worship of different deities. We've talked about Baphomet, and that their image of Baphomet is kind of blending the male, the female, that almost the perfect equilibrium, which is why you have sayings with it, with the Baphomet statues, the as above, so below. You get good and you get evil, you get the male, you get the female. That's their image of perfect equilibrium. And, that is one of their, what they consider a living sacrifice. You know, people have a choice. Are they going to give their child in the system? Um, Either you're going to give that child in death and sacrifice, or you're going to give that child as a living sacrifice. Um, instead of, for a lot of generations, really the only offering would be for that child, that first, especially the firstborns. Um, there would always be a firstborn before the females were of age, usually around, somewhere between 10 and 13. They would impregnate the girls, and, there would be an infant that would be sacrificed in a premature birth and delivery, and that would be considered the firstborn. But then, they would allow those people to get married. The girls might not even remember all of that initially. Um, and they'll have another child raised up as the firstborn then. But in this too, you also have, they're buying, selling, and trading, not just of the children, but for magical energy, for powers, for authorities, jurisdictions. Um, where children are born and where their, I don't know another way to say it other than where their footprints tread. That's all spiritual authority in the physical world. So a lot of these individuals that, they're adopting kids from other countries, it gives them um, what we call rights, quantum currency rights within other countries, other places. And that's why a lot of these celebrities invest, are so invested in their humanitarian efforts in other countries. It's because those humanitarian efforts give them access to quantum currencies where they're going to buy, sell, and trade off of blood, fingerprints, footprints, names. Um, even when they take a child and they're like, oh, we found this child, and they give them opportunities, they're raising that child up as another celebrity. All of that is a form of, entering into quantum currencies. It's all nefarious. They're buying, selling, and trading, and they make it look good. And in that, as they raise up these kids as celebrities, they aren't paying all the money for this kid. They get us to pay the money. We go to the concerts. We go to, support the new clothing lines. We go to, donate money to their humanitarian efforts. That's part of how they make their mass amounts of money. But in that, they get us to applaud and support the evil that they do because we're ignorant. We don't know what they're really doing behind the scenes. Um, what are they doing behind the scenes? They're doing horrific stuff. There's a bondage, there's chains of wickedness and yokes of oppression that they're putting over the area. And that comes in the forms of sorcery, divination, and witchcraft. And how is it being, what in those things are they really doing? It's, they're raping, they're adreno and organ harvesting, they're cannibalizing, they're then selling children after they ritually kill. They're selling their body parts to be incinerated into diamonds, and then they sell those specialty diamonds, on the market, and then they sell ashes to pharmakias, other things. So everything that they do has this form of godliness, but it looks good. But really, um, it's evil. There isn't anything good. Even on their light side, there's not any good. Um, the dark side comes in, causes death, doom, destruction, chaos. Then you get your light side come in, and they're gonna clean it up, make it look good. Oh, poor, that community got hit. Let us, send in the Red Cross and FEMA and, now take control of the area, and we're going to bring water and supplies and food and shelter, and we're here to help. We're your good Samaritans. We'll make sure you have all the medical and everything you need. And it's their way of getting control over an area,
Right.
cleaning up the mess, and they gain more access to people's lives through that. We literally give them permission in their humanitarian efforts to help us and to make decisions and have authority in our lives.
Exactly. I find that very interesting. Again, we know that these hurricanes and what have you, weather disasters are really a front for that. So I
Yeah.
think it's really good for us to know again, all of these things, what's actually going on. When you talk about quantum currency rights, can you please just define that? I understand when, obviously they will be getting rights over certain areas, maybe certain things, but maybe if you can just explain what.
Yeah, what the quantum currencies things are. There's six main ones. You've got, quantum currencies are things that relate to our physical body and as well as our soul. They're unique identifiers to each individual. Uh, they're going to include, your blood, your DNA, your name, which is also your breath sound, your numerical value, which, in the United States is going to be connected to your social security number. Then you've got like your footprints, which is connected to your authority. Scripture says that wherever the sole of your foot treads, there the Lord will give you the land. So it's connected directly to the authorities the Lord himself gives us over the areas where we're placed and born. And then you get your fingerprints, which are connected to the good works that God's prepared for you to do. So what happens is that, you know, like you'll see a lot of the easiest way to explain it is your tourist areas. They're excellent at building up these tourist areas. A lot of times what you'll see in these areas is you'll see, the tourist area will kind of be down in a little bit of a valley, and you're going to see everything built up in a crescent shape around it. And what they do with that is they funnel energy. So, they'll make something super exciting. Everybody's going to pay. You're going to go. You're going to take your kids, and they're going to have lots of things, lots of areas for you to walk, which is going to then um, pull off your footprint rights. And then they're going to have lots of things for you to touch, which is going to pull off those fingerprint rights. And in that, there's going to be a buying, selling, and trading off of those, off your energy that's left from those identifiers in the area. And you'll get, high level witches and warlocks that will sit and pull off that energy and will funnel it, um, store it, buy, sell, trade off of it.
How much
Right.
energy, how much energy though can you pick up from someone's fingerprint or soul print or whatever? And is it a once-off thing? Or does that fingerprint, does it kind of give them access to that child like a key? You know what I mean? I'm interested to know how that works.
Yeah. There's some things with that, whether they want to suppress certain energies or not, but naturally, um, we emit a lot of energy, and that energy is continual. It's meant to be in harmony with the rest of creation that God made. Um, in that they want to divide us from the source of that energy, which is our relationship with God. The more time we spend with God, the more that energy grows. Um, and it's part of, I don't know in other words to describe it other than the easiest way is to say that we're all a part of a song that's universal. Each of us has a part in that song, and that, we have a voice, we have a form in that, and that is meant to be heard, it's meant to be seen. That's the easiest way to describe the energy that we have is that, we're meant to be heard, we're meant to be seen, we're meant to, you know, be able to voice our part or display our part of the song that we're a part of. Um, so what they can do is try to suppress that and, steal aspects of that. And I think that's the easiest way I can describe what happens when I don't know if everybody would be able to feel it, but if you're curious, just, take each other's hands and just go like that, and you'll feel energy coming off.
Yeah.
Even your own hands, you can feel that energy coming off because we naturally emit a lot, including our feet. Both our hands and our feet are also meant to, gather energy. That's why, gather energy of praise. Like when we lift our hands up to the heavens, up to God, our face also is meant to gather energy. Our eyes being like a fountain that, that the glory of the Lord fills. And if we're not getting filled with the glory of the Lord, um, in those areas, what other fake glory are we receiving? They're masters at stopping that glory up. Look at how they work with some of their humanitarian efforts. One of the biggest ones being, let's make sure that every child has shoes. That automatically puts something between your feet and God's creation, which was meant to, you know, help supply God's glory and his energy. His word says the whole earth is filled with his glory, meaning that as little children are running barefoot on that grass, what glory are they getting filled with? It's, they're getting filled, their hearts getting filled with praise for God. It's distinctly connected with our relationship with God. And so, by putting souls and shoes on children that are fake souls, now automatically you've got to stop. They're not receiving um, access to that glory of the Lord, which they're meant to have access to.
Mm.
They're receiving something else, a fake glory, and somebody else is using their glory, their image in that, um, and is receiving the currency and all of that from that. Um, you know, think of this, some of the others, some of their other efforts. Make sure you wash your hands all the time. Although it seems like it's a huge thing for health, it is good. Is there something more nefarious with it? With that, you're running your hands underwater. We know that, water is distinctly connected to, you get a lot of the water principalities, a lot of the powers, you get a lot of the contracts from Leviathan, Ashtaroth, running through the different on-land waterways. Um, Piping even is conductivity. They used to have the old copper or old, steel piping. All of that's conductivity. They know where all those energy lines are. They divine for that. But is that another way that they're gaining access to us and to, um, our currencies? And are there contracts made even just simply in washing our hands? I think of, when I was little, they, you get some of the elements of ritual in some of these little things, but they would take all the kids in the kindergarten class to the bathroom. You know, they're going to line us all up in front of the sink. Everybody, you know, has to put their hands under there, put soap on, and you're running your hands under the water at the same time. Um, you know, does that connect to certain contracts and rituals? Is it an offering that you're bringing without even knowing it to the water deities? Um, you know, and there's just
This
so much
is
to the system. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you know, when we think of these things, when we see people like Charlize, we have to ask, you know, what is the sacrifice? What, you know, we know there's a brotherhood connection. We know they're engaged in different forms of um, things within the system. You know, it's
yeah.
not, they don't just, you know, it wasn't just like somebody was walking by and found her because of her talent. You know, they wanted her, they searched her out, and, you know, they were willing to bring her in because, you know, maybe, and again, it's speculation. You know, I'm the type, I want to believe people's hearts. I want to believe that, you know, it all had to do with protection and that maybe she was in a bad situation with her dad. But let's be real. You know, in the brotherhood, children have to do things to uh, gain higher ground in their degrees of illumination. Was her father a sacrifice in order for her to, you know, get fame, power, and authority? There's always going to be something that they have to do to rise and to elevate in that authority and in their degrees of illumination.
Isn't it?
There's
Isn't
that
it in,
trust, you know?
because there again, let's look at this. I mean, whether you are deeming us to be big conspiracy theorists here in the way we're talking or not, let's just take a step back though. And let's look at how many celebrities, musos, have lost a family member and a close family member, be it a spouse, a parent, a child, maybe a sibling, right, in an accident.
Right.
I mean, let's just look at that. If we just think about that, let's just John Travolta with his son, right? And
Hmm.
apparently they were the Jehovah's Witness, so wouldn't let him have a blood transfusion. I don't know, you know, even, I mean, Kanye West was going off and saying, yeah, well, Jay-Z, this, and he said, I sacrificed my mother. Kanye West spoke about him sacrificing his mother. I mean, those Kardashian girls, their father, right? Not long before they all became famous. Now, again, are we, you know, am I accurate in what I'm saying? I hope not, actually. You know, there's a lot of speculation here, but we have to see that there's a pattern, that there's a
Hmm.
certain pattern that, and this thread continues throughout. And I'm also interested, Jessie, when we're looking at the African kids. Now, we know when we look at Africa, I know the West has been using Africa as its own personal grocery store since forever. You must see what they do here. It is actually monumentally problematic. These
Hmm.
Rio Tinto, which is Australian, mining companies, they come in here, they mine. These mines, the ground, you can fit 6 trucks in there, right? That's how big the hole, the gaping hole is. They mine and then they leave. They don't cover up anything. These are shafts that are 2 kilometers long down.
Hmm.
That's over a mile down. Kids are falling in there. Murders are happening in there. That sort of thing. I'm saying that that's what's happening in Africa. Not only,
Yep.
you know, has there been the bush wars where the mines, you know, the land mines and stuff were blowing everyone up left, right, and center. these mining companies come in here, they rape Africa to a smithereen, they leave gaping freaking holes in our earth where they've been mining and just F off. I tell you, I'm actually having conversations with people about this right now. It's a massive problem. Kids are falling in there. People are just disappearing. The Zamazamas, it's called the Zamazamas, yeah, illegal miners. So now the mining companies come, they leave these gaping holes open, move on to the next area. Then the Zamazamas, they call the Zamazamas, that's the illegal miners. They put these like pieces of metal across, right, from one end to the other, tie rope down, just like knotted, and take themselves down. They hang themselves down, like, you know, move themselves down. And then they start mining illegally. And then they obviously get the dregs of the gold and the stuff. Now, I mean, it's so annoying. Where does the responsibility lie? Of course, when you're hungry and starving and you've got a family to feed, you're going to do what you can to, and especially when it's shiny and it comes out of the earth. So yes, there's a lot of that. There's a mafia, there's gangs, there's all sorts of things. But this, unfortunately, is what happens. So they'll come here, they'll mine, rape our continent, go away, have beautiful diamonds cut in Antwerp, in freaking Belgium, selling them for millions all over the world. The Queen sits with Africa's biggest diamond in her crown. Give it back. Doesn't even belong to your hag. I'm mad. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, you know, it's like if we DNA tested a lot of that stuff, I think we'd find, you know, that there's been a lot of lying. They've outright lied to us about a lot of things.
For sure. Why do you think, other than Africa's resources and minerals, why do you think they will come for the African kids? Is there a difference in anatomy? I mean, I've heard in the past there's more iron. I've heard that they like the iron, but then in the African people's blood, stronger the rhythm. Because you see a 1-year-old African child, all it does is dance. That baby, from when it gets onto its feet, they dance. So they've got this incredible connection and rhythm with the earth. They have strong connection to their spiritual ancestors. So I'm also...
Yeah, I don't have an exact answer for that. You know, my experience in the system was a little different. You know, I witnessed more of the African children being used as, you know, as expendable children or as workers. You do have some of what's considered the Black nobility within the system. You get some of that through the line of Solomon and Queen Sheba, that's elevated. But, you know, for the most part, in my experience, you know, at the very top of the system, they don't have a connection with that. You get more of that connection starting at the quadrants, which you may have, you know, some of the councilmen or some of the quadrant leaders who are overseeing those areas. But, you know, I don't know, you know, from what I experienced, you know, they didn't have that full connection with the African, but yet they definitely would rape, pillage, and, you know, take advantage of the country and of things from Africa, whether that was children or animals. That was very true, but you know, I don't know as to speaking to the blood or the flesh, or if there's something particular in that some people in the system desire more than others. You know, I don't know on that, but I definitely would agree that you have more of that depth of spirituality. You've got, from you know, kind of what I see, you've got more of some of the ancient contracts with some of the deities in their territories over certain areas. And I think it has to do more with, you know, jurisdiction, territory, and authority than anything else, you know.
Right.
But
And singing as well, you know, for me, because I always think about every hierarchy child that I've interviewed has had a good voice. They've required them to sing. Their voices had to be, and of course, the African people have
yeah,
incredible
beautiful.
singing voices, you know. So if you
Yeah,
combine the singing, the dancing, the rhythm, I can imagine they would probably be used
yeah.
for stuff like that as well. I want to just backtrack a little bit to what you were saying earlier on when I was mentioning about Queenie Lizzie and our diamond in her crown. When you say we've been lied to, are you saying that with a lot of maybe those diamonds and stuff, they're not coming from mines? Are you saying they're possibly coming from elsewhere, more nefarious
Yeah,
places,
I think the majority of them come from elsewhere. That, you know,
such
they're in the
as
business of,
incinerators?
yeah, they're in the business of what they're now advertising as lab-grown diamonds. You know, that those diamonds really come from the remains of their sacrificial kills. And
So what's the difference? I mean, if you look at a lab-grown diamond and a earth-grown diamond, if you're looking at the way it's, what do you call it? The stuff that it's whatever. What is the
ashes,
difference?
yeah.
Is it
Well, one's
different?
gonna be natural from God, and, you know, in that,
Sure.
when you look at how they're made, you get, you know, diamonds come from highly pressurized. It's my belief that a lot of the diamonds come from, you know, the remains of from the flood, from Noah's day, where you had this mass pressurization that occurred through that flood, things sealed into rocks and other stuff like that. So you still have the remain of something that's in there. Um, could the big Queen's big rock be, you know, be the remains of a
Wow.
dinosaur? I mean, it could be the remains of a dinosaur or a whale. You know, it's documented literally that a whale was found vertical up on a mountaintop. How does that happen? You know, they don't fly. Maybe they do. Um, but um, you know, how did that happen unless there was a flood, right? And did that flood, you know, seal and pressurize things into certain areas, rocks? I believe it did. Now, that's the same reason, you know, they go after the oil as well. I think a lot of that also comes from that event. But in that, you know, what's the difference? One is going to be, you know, sealed in. It comes from that rock being pushed together so hard that you know, things are formed in there that come from, you know, um, but human or animal remains, something bio. Um, but the lab grown, those are going to come from, you know, they do the same thing, only they use incinerators. They pressurize under high extreme heat and fire and pressurize those ashes. And that is what turns into the diamond. Um, they can do the same thing in their blood magic. Those at the highest level, you know, are skilled to be able to change the shape of the blood cells and, you know, are able to create diamonds in the blood cells, which, you know, we'll get into this in another show, but I would propose that your blood diamonds are are more than just a color or, you know, an additive in there. Do they specialize in making diamonds out of blood, you know, and are they able to change your white and red blood cells and change the shape of those? You know, are they able to use that even as a weapon? You know, and then you're Like, well, how does that work, and what do they got going on underground there? This is far darker than anybody could ever imagine, the things that they engage in. And
Wow. Yeah, thanks, Captain. It's okay, Chantal. I'm like, yeah, wow, okay, we definitely, I mean, that is a show for another day for sure. And we are going to do that because okay, if they, let's say, hypothetically speaking, they're making a diamond from blood. So they would have obviously have to put that through different processes and pressures and to get it to that shape. Why are you shaking your head?
because they do it through blood magic. They learn to control energy. That's where you get into the mass energy movement, the nuclear, all of that they'll consider nuclear. But they're able to control that and do it all within the body. That's part of their highest parts of blood magic. And think of that, because it's not even just about what's in your veins or what's in a child's veins. Do they do torture with children through that? And could that be even part of, why do they want to tell little boys that they have monthly periods? Why do they, get young girls to bleed and, do have their first things? Is there more to that? Is that part of their offerings, first blood offerings, through blood magic? And, what do they all offer to these deities and these spirits? Where do they offer it? Their places of offering, their altars to have fire. Do they have to have a church incinerator, or can they offer it, through some of their other ancient, we'll just call it fires, and is there more to when they make children walk through fires? When we've talked about some of the training programs, where literally they train children, people, to be able to change their state of matter between the physical and the spiritual, state of matters. We know they've got ghost warriors. We know they astral project. But is there more to all that they, that they have figured out? And is that part of their worship and their profit? I would propose it is.
I would say that is because I think the more depraved and the more unholy things get with them, the happier they are. Because, of course, everything depraved is
Right.
celebrated there. Wow. Okay, well, I most certainly look forward to having that show and learning. I mean, I know we've done shows on that before, but wow. I've got so many questions, but I don't want to ask them now because I know it's just going to open up a whole. I'll leave it for the next show.
We'll save them for this show.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all of you can probably see my head going, I feel like my hair's standing up. Did you see my hair? It suddenly became unruly.
We need an unruly hair day, like,
well, it's
there's
because
some of this stuff where you're like, no, it can't be, it's like, I mean, it just, when you think you've got it all, it just keeps on going deeper and deeper. And, there's just no end to their extent of evil. We can't
and
even
of course,
imagine.
and then of course, I'm wondering, when we're looking at the different, like, chimeras and things that they make, from all sorts of different aberrations of something, you know, that has to be powerful blood magic too, you know, the way I see it, because everything around that, obviously blood is your life force, right? Whether
Yeah.
you've got, you know, so as far as I'm concerned, and that's of course part of the questioning when we're looking at these things, and when we're looking at the werewolves and that sort of thing. I mean, that to me is powerful blood magic. It has to be. It can't be another way. I just don't know how they do it though. So I'd be very interested, you know, to obviously more about that as well. Am I on the right track? Is it blood magic? Am I at least on the right track? Can you tell me yes or no?
I would put vampires and werewolves and all of that under changeling spirits, that they have a
Okay.
contract with a spirit that changes the body. Are there blood contracts in that? Probably. I would say, you know, highly yes on that, but as to that actually being workers of blood magic, usually not. Maybe more so your vampires, but you know, they're not going to be your highest practitioners of magic in the system per se, but you will have some, like your those that are in higher positions in those departments, whether protectors or maybe some of your quadrant leaders, they'll be higher in those things than your average vampire werewolf. You know, so it just depends on what are their magical studies in the system, and you know, how skilled are they in their Solomonic magic.
Wow. Super, super duper interesting. Thank you, Jessie. Looking
Yeah.
forward to doing a couple of more shows on that. That's for sure. Anyway, I think we've had a fantastic chat today about all sorts of things, from foggy mistiness and earthquakes and tsunamis in Africa, and Charlize doing her shenanigans, and blood magic happening. And oh my goodness, okay. Yeah, it's definitely been a jam-packed information show today. So I want to, yeah, next week, definitely. But we're going to be doing The Simpsons as well. In fact, maybe next week, when we're going to be doing the Simpson predictions for 2025. We're going to be talking about that. Let's see what happens with the
Yay.
2025 Simpson predictions. Yeah, Jess?
We'll see what happens.
They've been busy, those Simpsons. Right?
They have.
Yeah. Anyway, Jessie, thank you so much for joining us today on this amazing Friday. Such a pleasure having a Friday afternoon with you all. I'm going into evening now. I think it might be close to 6. And you guys enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. We've already paved the way for you here in Africa. The day here is done, and it's a beautiful day. So enjoy it. Jessie, would you like to end for us in prayer? Unless there's something you'd just like to say before ending.
No, that's good. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day again. And we just ask that as each of us part today, that you would bless our day. We ask that it would be a day filled with sunshine, with your goodness, with laughter, with joy. Father, we ask that all the heaviness of this conversation that you would carry, that you would lift off our shoulders, that you would allow us to be in that place where we stand in truth, yet in that, Lord, where we can still rejoice and delight and take joy in the things that you are doing. We ask this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I so appreciate you all. Happy 2025, as I've said, and I'm looking forward to an amazing year. It just feels like this year is going to be, sure, we had a tough one last year, that's for sure. And I
Yeah.
think it's a nice movement forward. And I definitely have got lots of changes happening this year, that's for sure, which are, when I know more, I'll let you guys know. But lots of fun. And change is always wonderful. When change comes knocking at your door, you know it's time. Yes, We should not fear change at all. God bless you, guys. Take good care of yourselves. Thank you so much, Jessie. Have a beautiful weekend, everybody. Bye.